This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, historic collapse. Nova Scotia Liberals look to rebuild after falling to just 2 seats in the legislature.
Record low turnout. Just 45% of eligible voters cast ballots in Tuesday's provincial election.
And new purpose. A Halifax organics facility turns food waste into high-grade compost.
A messy mix of rain and snow tonight, changing to rain into Friday with some gusty winds in store and a cool down for that 7-day forecast. Your full details are coming up.
Good evening. Nova Scotia Liberals and their supporters are reflecting on this week's election results, the worst in the party's history.
Now the party is grappling with some big questions about where to go from here. Taryn Grant has our top story tonight.
Election night was devastating for the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, and those who are still loyal to it are trying to figure out how to rebuild.
When you have to build from the foundation, it's a long process. You're not just redoing a room, right? This is going to be a long, long process.
Maura Ryan is one of the authors of this report. After losing government in 2021, the Liberal Party wanted to learn from its mistakes. The review was supposed to lead to a better outcome in the next election, but that clearly didn't happen. Since then, 2 Liberals crossed the floor to join the Progressive Conservatives, and 5 MLAs decided they would not reoffer. All but 2 Liberal incumbents lost their seats this week, and the party was knocked down to 3rd place. Ryan says the party needs to reassess its core values, and she thinks it should be asking, once again, for feedback from candidates, campaign managers, and party members.
When the dust settles and they catch their breath, I know some of them are exhausted and tired and disappointed, but that certainly would be the first conversation, I guess, is to kind of do a little bit of an audit of what worked and what didn't work. That's certainly what we did in 2021.
Ian Rankin, the one-time leader of the Liberal Party and Premier, and Derek Mombercat are the only 2 Liberals returning to Province House. With fewer members, the Liberals will have less money, which means fewer staff and resources.
This is going to be a big change for us. We will have less seats in the House, but we will go to work every day and fight like we always did.
Rankin says there are fractures within the party that need to be mended, but he says he's up for the hard work.
I don't think that everybody wants Tim Houston to continue to be the Premier and that they're giving up entirely on the Liberal Party.
Liberal leader Zach Churchill lost his seat. He hasn't resigned, but that isn't stopping questions about a change in leadership.
Hey, Minister Fraser, do you think you'll run for the Liberal Party in Nova Scotia?
Look, I'm not making any plans. I get a job to do up here, and I'm focused on doing that job well.
Churchill is expected to meet with his caucus next week to talk about his plans. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
The historic win for the Progressive Conservatives this week, it came with another record. The 2024 Nova Scotia election had the lowest voter turnout ever for the province. Josh Hoffman explains.
Tim Houston's Progressive Conservatives won a supermajority this week, taking 43 seats in the election, more than any party before them. Houston called a snap election last month, defying his party's own fixed election date legislation and sending voters to the polls almost a year early. It paid off for the PCs. However, it looks like Nova Scotians weren't that interested. Only 45% of voters cast a ballot in this election, according to the unofficial results from Elections Nova Scotia. Now that's an all-time low for the province and marks the first time turnout dipped below 50%. Turnout in 9 of the 55 electoral districts in Nova Scotia fell all the way below 40% this year. The Progressive Conservatives were the only party that picked up more votes in this election than in 2021, the last time Nova Scotians went to the polls. The Liberal Party had by far the worst outing, getting roughly 70,000 less votes than they did 3 years ago. It's hard to say what exactly is behind the record low turnout, but we do know there were some hurdles and confusion for voters this year. Elections Nova Scotia announced at the start of the campaign that they wouldn't be providing voter information cards due to the potential of a Canada Post strike, which ultimately did happen. On the morning of Election Day, the agency also experienced technical issues with their website and phone lines, hindering people trying to find out where to vote. I spoke to one gentleman who lives on the Eastern Shore and says he's voted at the same place near his home since 1985. But when he went to cast his ballot this year, he was turned away and told to go to a polling station much further away. He said that wasn't a problem for him, but for many others, they just turned around and went back home. Josh Hoffman, CBC News, Halifax.
A quick check-in on the weather now. Here's Ryan Snoddon.
Yes, sounds a bit messy.
Yeah, definitely messy as we move through tonight and into Friday morning as well. And it's not only the rain, but of course the snow that we're tracking with this system. Now, Tri-County area, the South Shore, Halifax, Eastern Shore, Southern Cape Breton, this is going to be rain and maybe a few wet flakes mixing in, but no accumulation. It's further to the north, the Valley, Hants, Colchester, Cumberland, Pictou, Antigonish, and certainly into Inverness and Victoria counties that we're talking about accumulating snow, a trace to 5 centimeters, but the Cobequid Pass and the Cape Breton Highlands more likely to see 5 to 10 centimeters. These are the areas that are most likely to see the leftover snow tomorrow morning, even after that transition to rain. I'm less concerned about that, though there could be some slick spots early Friday morning. Based on the timing of this, you can see by the time we get to Friday morning, that rain snow line will have lifted well to the north. We're going to be seeing the melting, the temperatures rising overnight tonight. We're going to be, for the most part, in the 3, 4, 5 range by the time we get to tomorrow morning and we're hitting the roads. But again, there could be some leftover slushiness, so leave yourself some extra time and space for tomorrow, especially if you're traveling through the Cobequid Pass. Now, that low will move its way out. We'll see some lingering showers for Friday, another chance for showers and a few flurries on Saturday, and some much cooler air filtering in for next week. We'll talk about that with your 7-day forecast coming up.
Yeah, lots to talk about there. Okay,
Thanks,
Ryan.
Ryan.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The food waste Halifax residents throw in their green bins has a new purpose and value. The city's new organics facility can create high-quality compost for the first time. And as Haley Ryan found out, it doesn't smell as bad as you might think.
Halifax's new organics facility can turn food waste like this into this.
This is our finished product. So this would be Class A compost with unrestricted use for growing food and other crops.
The new facility in Goodwood opened in September. It replaces 2 former facilities in nearby Ragged Lake and Burnside. They turned out poor quality compost that was too wet and acidic to meet provincial guidelines. But the new site uses the latest technology to process waste within 3 months.
The software takes over and we're able to manage the oxygen and the moisture of the material. So we're just providing the conditions necessary for the microbes to do their thing.
The old process used to take nearly a year.
This is like a Ferrari compared to the jalopies, right? Not that there was anything wrong with the original facilities. They did their intended purpose and they finished out their lifespan, but this is the latest and greatest.
The compost is sold to an agricultural company, but the municipality is planning public giveaways next year. The city hopes this could encourage people to properly recycle. About 10% of garbage that ends up in the landfill is still food waste.
We want to be able to get this literally into the hands of people so they can see the efforts that they've been putting in are really worthwhile.
The building is off the grid, using stormwater and staying warm thanks to the composting process itself.
So these vessels would get up to about 60 degrees C, and we can redirect that air to provide heat for the facility.
The reality of composting is the facility does stink, but it has new ways to keep odors inside and away from neighbors.
It's a breath of fresh air.
Garbage trucks pull into an airlock system where the outer door closes before the interior one can open. Air is also sent through acid scrubbers and filtered before it's vented out a roof stack. Simmons says this makes a real difference for people living nearby.
And when I explained the odor locking doors, that was the beginning and the end of the conversation. This convinced them.
That air scrubbing has another benefit. It creates ammonium sulfate, which can be used as a liquid fertilizer. The facility handles about 53,000 tons of waste a year, with a capacity of 60,000 to keep up with a growing city. Haley Ryan, CBC News, Halifax.
A Halifax songwriting duo's song is on fire thanks to its role in a new Netflix Christmas movie, Hot Frosty. And I'm here with Jesse Legale, one of the songwriters. Tell me about the song and how it all came about.
It was a song that I had written, just myself in the basement, and I was pitching it originally for a Buddhist film here in Halifax. It was being made. Didn't get accepted. And then I was given a request from the Olympics, for the Summer Olympics, from the publishing company I work with. So me and my partner, Palmer Jamerson, fleshed it out, wrote lyrics, wrote melodies, and submitted that. And we got in Kim Harris, the singer, local singer,
right,
to sing on it. She can belt. And submitted to that. And again, nothing, crickets. And then about a month later, we got an email that said this small Christmas movie would like it. Would you guys be interested in putting it there? And we said, of course.
And it's called If I Could Touch the Sky.
If I Could Touch the Sky.
And when did you realize this small Christmas movie was going to be a big Netflix production?
Pretty much when it came out, because we don't get much information. So when it was released and I saw the cast, a bunch of big American actors, a few big Canadian actors, the lead from Schitt's Creek, and then I saw it go up to #1 on Netflix. I thought, oh, this is a lot better than I had anticipated.
Well, talk to me about the scene where you hear your song in the movie.
Hot Frosty, the snowman who's come to life, is dancing with the main character who's lost her husband and is going through a bunch of things. And this is a scene where they finally come together at a prom, and our song comes up and they dance to it.
Well, what does that feel like for you, hearing the song and watching it married with the movie?
It feels good because normally when you get your music in these films, it's very quiet in the background. And in this scene, it takes over and becomes a soundtrack. So that's good for us, and because a lot of people will hear it.
You have more songs in the works?
Yeah, we got an album coming out this winter, and that's currently being pitched to film and TV as well, but it's also just an album for people to listen to, and so we're very excited about that.
No, songwriting's not your only job for now, but I understand you're hoping it will be?
That would be ideal, but right now I'm a delivery driver for a bakery. I do that part-time, but I'm hoping to transition this winter into doing this full-time, and it seems that that's going to happen.
Well, what do you think this association with Netflix will do for your career?
What it does is it allows more people to hear the music, more people stream it, people in the film industry might like the song. It just opens it up to a wider audience, and that always is just beneficial.
All right, well, thanks so much, and congratulations.
Thank you so much for having me.
Might have to watch that, put you in the Christmas spirit. Keeping with the Christmas spirit, many folks are, of course, starting to decorate for the holiday season. And you may be asking yourself, should I buy a real or fake Christmas tree?
Well, those in the industry say the real deal is the better choice to help the environment. Taylor O'Brien has that story from PEI.
The holiday season is fast approaching, and at Drummond's Christmas Tree Farm, some islanders purchase their tree as early as Remembrance Day. They've been selling trees here for almost 30 years, and they say there's been an increase in customers in recent years. The co-owner says one of the reasons why is because people are realizing how much better real trees are for the environment.
And they realize that, yes, we do cut down a tree, but we replant it. We're not clear cutting and we're just putting it back to agricultural land. We're replanting these trees, and there is a natural cycle to it.
The Canadian Christmas Trees Association executive director says there are a number of reasons why real trees are better for the environment.
We sink carbon and we produce oxygen, which is great. And so it's always in the back of our minds of what's the positive of Christmas tree farming and how good it is, as opposed to, going upstairs into the attic and pulling that box of dust down to put that not so friendly tree up.
When it comes to real trees, Brennan says the way the trees break down and get recycled helps with sustainability.
It's 100% biodegradable, right? Every aspect of your tree goes back into the land.
Once a tree gets cut down, it will decompose in 2 to 3 years. On PEI, islanders can get their Christmas tree collected by Island Waste Management for composting after the holiday season ends. Drummond says some environmental agencies like Waste Watch will take the trees to the sand dunes or riverbanks to help prevent erosion. You can even give your tree to farmers for their goats to eat. Some people reuse their artificial trees, but as for disposing them,
all it is plastic and wire. So it's going to take decades for any of that to break down, and it's going to sit in the landfill.
Drummond and Brennan both have advice for people looking to buy a real Christmas tree this season. Know how tall your ceiling is, so you know what size tree to get. Give it plenty of water, especially if you're going to be keeping it in a warm environment before putting it up, and give the tree stump a fresh cut. Taylor O'Brien, CBC News, South Freetown.
And as we head to break, a look at Rogers Square in downtown Halifax.
And Ryan is up next after the break.
All right, that time of year where there's lots of weather to talk about in the forecast.
Rain, slush, some folks, a little snow.
Yeah, the further north you are, the better chance that we're going to see some accumulation tonight. But as you'll see with this hour by hour that I'm about to break down, I mean, we'll have transition to rain before we head out the door tomorrow morning, and temperatures are going to be on the rise. So there's lots of time for that snow to melt. So I'm less and less concerned about that morning commute being a slick one, even for places like the Valley and the North Shore. Cobequid Pass, maybe.
Always a factor.
It's always a wild beast, that Cobequid Pass. Have a look at our warnings. And yeah, that snowfall warning in effect for New Brunswick. The weather statement, special weather statement in effect for Victoria and as well as Inverness County and Cumberland County. And you can see the lace wet wind warning in effect. Some gusts to 110 with this system coming through. That's a breeze, I guess, for the lace wet winds. But yes, nonetheless, impactful. And you can see that rain snow outlook in case you're just joining us. Mostly rain along the Atlantic coastline and drawing that line of that rain snow right through the valley and edging northern Halifax County, but mainly Hants County, and then across the Northumberland shore and into northern Cape Breton. And there are those spots in the darker pink that I've highlighted that show you where we're looking at our greater potential for 5 to 10 centimeters, hence the greater chance that there'll be some leftovers tomorrow morning to contend with for driving. Temperatures out there right now, mild. You're saying snow tonight? Well, yes, we're going to see those temperatures drop, and it is indeed coming in as rain. That will also impact how much snow can stick, right? When it's falling onto water, there's going to be some melting before temperatures cool down, no question about it. That system will move through. Just have to quickly, before we get to that, show you how far south that colder air we've been tracking all week long. Minus 20 in Regina right now, minus 17 in Edmonton, minus 14 in Calgary. I mean, it is full on winter in the prairies. Minus 11 in Winnipeg. That cooler air sweeping into the Great Lakes, lake effect snow on the way there. And yes, all the way to Atlanta at 11 degrees right now. Tonight, winds southeast 40, gusting 60, 70, even 80 kilometers per hour through the overnight. The strongest gusts are going to be along the Atlantic coastline. And again, those gusts to 110 for the Inverness and the Les Souhaits winds. So a heads up on that. Those winds are going to be a factor, no doubt about that, especially along the Atlantic coastline. Can't rule out an isolated outage. Gusts to 60 in the northern parts of the province. Let's time it out. And you can see there's the snow, which again, that rain snow line will hug right into northern Halifax County. This is going to be our area with the best chance of accumulation. But note overnight, the temperature's bumping up, the change to rain by 2-3 a.m. Potential for some double digits down here in the south and west overnight, and more likely high single digits. Note by 6 a.m., we transition to rain, showers, and drizzle. Even Amherst is at 2 degrees by around 6 a.m. Cobequid Pass likely just edging above the freezing marks, hence the potential for some leftover snow there, as well as the Cape Breton Highlands. Into tomorrow, some lingering showers, couple of sunny breaks, but overall a quieter day and a better chance for some sun into the latter half of the afternoon before the sun sets. So these high temperatures you see here indeed will be our highs, but temperatures will drop into the afternoon again as those westerly winds usher in that cooler air. And the westerly winds will be gusty as well. We're going to gust to 40 here in the west, gusting 50 to 60 in central, and gusting to 50 in through Cape Breton in the east as well. So it will be an impactful afternoon wind-wise. Now, that low will move off to the north. Little trough digging through here will spark some showers and flurries on Saturday, maybe even some grapple, some of those snow pellets. But Saturday won't be really a windy day. Temperatures into the low to mid single digits. But overall, yeah, not a bad day for Saturday. Temperatures 3, 4, 5 degrees. Now look ahead to Sunday. And that we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud with just an isolated chance of a flurry. Temperatures right around 3 degrees. And note, ticking down those temperature highs throughout the week and the overnight lows as well. And that cold air, as I've been saying, Tom and Amy, still looks set to hold right through next weekend. So the most significant shot of cold air we've seen so far sustained, that's for sure.
Yes, we have to get used to it, don't we?
Yeah, bundle up.
Okay, Ryan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Coming up, breaking down what U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's proposed tariffs mean for the Canadian economy. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is vowing to impose massive tariffs on all goods entering the United States from Canada and Mexico.
The CBC's Andrew Chang breaks down why experts say this move would be devastating to the Canadian economy.
Donald Trump just threatened a 25% tariff.
The tariff. The word tariff to me is the most beautiful word in the entire dictionary. We're going to tariff the hell out of them.
I am a tariff man. On all goods coming into the United States from Canada and Mexico. That would raise the price on food, medicine, cars, oil, lumber, concrete. And Trump says it would be a day one priority after his inauguration.
It's a bit of, rinse, wash, repeat, that cycle going on again.
Even more of a negative downward pressure on U.S. economic growth.
Experts are warning this could eventually impact our wallets.
Yeah, this could directly impact our wallets.
But there's one big problem when it comes to interpreting what Donald Trump is proposing here, because there's the policy and then there's the posturing. And it's not easy to tell which of the two is real. Let's go through it.
The consequences are going to be devastating for Canada. The U.S. is our largest trading partner. Roughly 70% of the totality of our trade is with the United States.
A 25% tariff is effectively a 25% tax on whatever comes into the United States based on how expensive that thing is. So if a company's shipping in a $40,000 car, now it's a $50,000 car. The company pays the tax, that makes the vehicle more expensive for the consumer, and the US government pockets the difference.
The basic rule of supply is that if the price goes up, I want to produce more of this stuff. If the price goes down, I want to produce less. It means I need less workers, and so people start losing their jobs.
And this is a big problem for a country like Canada, because last year it exported almost $600 billion worth of goods to the United States. That's more than 3/4 of all of Canada's exports. And Canada's trade relationship with the US is about 2/3 of this country's GDP. The top 5 exports: energy, that's mainly crude oil, and cars. And note, that includes car parts. The auto industry is a really good example of how damaging tariffs can be for those who have to pay them. Because cars aren't just built in one country. The engine might be built in one place, the transmission in another. Then they're assembled in yet another place. And all of these components can cross national borders multiple times before they magically turn into a car. A tariff charges a tax every time they do.
The average car crosses the border 7 or 8 times, 8, 9 times over the course of its production. Trying to unwind that in a way that doesn't hurt American consumers is an incredibly difficult task. I spoke to one trade analyst in the United States who said, tinkering even a little bit with the fundamentals of that trade organization is like doing surgery without anesthesia.
And consider how some parts manufacturers have plants on both sides of the Canada-US border, and many ship parts between locations constantly. A company like that would have to completely rethink its supply chain, or else face 25% higher costs, sometimes multiple times for the same product.
If you're a manufacturer that is responsible for that supply chain, would you not just move your supply chain entirely into the US and forget the idea of having to deal with tariffs entirely?
Then there's the impact on everyday Americans.
Canada provides raw goods. We send energy, we send lumber, we send steel, we send grain. So American consumers, if these go ahead, are going to get clobbered by essentially taxes on everything they consume.
You know how much fruit and vegetables the U.S. imports from Canada and Mexico? According to the U.S. government, in 2022, about half of all fresh fruit and almost 90% of vegetables came from those two countries. All of that produce could become 25% more expensive, effectively overnight. Want to build a house? You might just be importing Canadian lumber and concrete. And the unfortunate side effect of tariffs is that they tend to start trade wars.
They put tariffs on some stuff, we put tariffs on some stuff.
Getting into a tariff war with the U.S. is like getting into a fight with a giant, where for every punch you throw, you get 4, back at you.
The last time the U.S. played hardball with tariffs, they didn't ultimately go very far.
Canada is bracing not just for the impact of tariffs, but potentially a larger trade war.
When Trump was last president, tariffs were part of a negotiation. A U.S. tax on steel and aluminum led to this.
President Trump's trade tariffs on Canada are sparking retaliation. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promising comparable tariffs on the U.S.
Polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
And in 2018, it was a really strange assortment of American products that Canada slapped tariffs on. Everything from ketchup to oranges to whiskey. But Heinz is co-headquartered in Pennsylvania, a key swing state. Oranges are grown in Florida. Whiskey is made in Kentucky and Tennessee. These are all states that voted Republican. And that pressure worked.
Everything ultimately settled back down to business as usual.
And get this, that same year, the Trump administration was mulling over a 25% tariff on all vehicles imported into the United States. Sound familiar? There was backlash.
Tariffs on autos and auto parts will raise costs for our customers and their families.
And that threat was very soon lifted. Canada-U.S. trade normalized once again with an updated trade pact.
He's used trade threats to extract certain concessions from others. 2017, he threatened to pull out of NAFTA immediately. And then Canada and Mexico said, look, we're willing to renegotiate this agreement with you. And he said, fine, we'll come to the table and we'll talk.
We spent the entire first term of the Trump presidency talking about what was bluster, what was a threat, what was real. And what we learned is that it was a little bit of everything, but it was mostly a leverage point in a negotiation.
Trump's forte is in controlling the conversation. He puts his opponents on the defensive.
He's always talked about the art of the deal and what a great negotiator he is. Is this really something that he wants, or is this something that he's going to use as a bargaining chip to get something else that he wants?
And we should bear in mind, almost every expert I've heard from so far has underscored the very important point that we are still very early in the game. Trump isn't even president yet. His inauguration is 2 months from now. That's potentially 2 months of back-channel negotiation. And this expression of policy, if we can call it that, was just a social media post. On January 20th, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the United States and its ridiculous open borders. That last quip about open borders is the other reason it's hard to gauge how serious a policy proposal this really is. Because in this post, Trump isn't giving any economic reason to impose tariffs, and he would gladly remove them under the following circumstances. This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country.
He decided to attach immigration and drug problems at the border with trade. And that's the path forward. And whether they have anything to do with one another or not doesn't really matter at this point. At the end of the day, he's using this as a wedge, as a tactic, and as a piece of leverage to get us to the table with concessions.
So look, this is a hard threat to read. It's early, Trump can be unpredictable, and if he follows through, he would have to explain to an American public how he so passionately campaigned on a promise to reduce inflation when his day one executive order is to effectively make all North American imports more expensive. But he could follow through regardless. And having that threat out there, hanging over his enemies and his allies, does a lot of heavy lifting in a negotiation before anyone at the table has even said a word.
Coming up, Russia strikes near Kyiv and launches a blitz on the Ukrainian energy grid.
And is it possible for Canada to close the illegal gateway to the United States amid Trump's border security demands? Welcome back. Russia is now threatening to attack critical operation centers in Kyiv with a new intermediate-range ballistic missile.
This comes after a massive attack on the country's civilian and energy infrastructure left more than 1 million people without power. Briar Stewart reports on Ukraine's efforts to keep at least some of that infrastructure operational.
Nearly 200 Russian drones and missiles might have been targeting Ukraine's energy sites, but near Odessa, homes were severely damaged too, leaving dozens of families homeless, including one who moved to this area after fleeing fighting further east. There is a huge crater outside. Everything here has been smashed to bits, said this man whose family moved from Kherson. Across the country, generators hummed as more than 1 million people were left without power right after the strikes. In the city of Mykolaiv, which lies less than 50 kilometers from the front, people lined up to get water at one of the only stations still operating amid the outages. Businesses were open, but the power was off. You can't try the clothes on because it's very cold, this business owner said, but we will get over this. This is the second major attack on Ukraine's energy grid in the past 2 weeks. Russia's president said the attack, which included the targeting of military sites, was in part a response to Ukraine launching U.S. missiles deeper into Russia. But Ukraine's energy system has been a top target throughout the war. Half of the country's generating capacity has been wiped out. This plant in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine now lies right on the front line. But before it could be completely cut off, workers disassembled it, sending the parts further west, where they were badly needed to repair sites, especially before the winter sets in.
If we will have temperature like -10, -15 Celsius for a long time, more than 1 week, it looks like we will need at minimum 8 hours per day outage.
It's a given that there will be more attacks on Ukraine's energy grid. What's unclear is just how punishing the winter weather will be. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
It's the second day of the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, and already thousands of people who fled Lebanon are returning home. But Israel is still hitting back against what it says are violations of the agreement. Tom Perry has the latest.
The IDF, Israel's military, says the Israeli Air Force struck a facility today in southern Lebanon that Hezbollah was using to store medium-range rockets. Earlier in the day, we heard about an Israeli drone strike against individuals, it said, were in a vehicle in southern Lebanon, approaching some positions and in breach of the ceasefire agreement. Israel had said going into this that even with a ceasefire, it reserved the right to go after Hezbollah if Hezbollah violated that ceasefire agreement. But we, of course, have been hearing as well today from a Hezbollah member of parliament in Lebanon who accuses Israel of violating the ceasefire agreement, saying they're going after civilians, Lebanese civilians returning to their homes in the south of Lebanon. Amid all this, there is growing pressure in Israel on the Israeli government in light of a ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah to try to pursue a ceasefire agreement with Hamas. U.S. President Joe Biden has said he wants to renew efforts to reach a ceasefire agreement and end the war in Gaza. We've been seeing protests in Israel really for months.
We've seen that a ceasefire is possible. There was a ceasefire in the north. It's time for a ceasefire in the south. 101 hostages are waiting for 418 days for Netanyahu to make the right decision. Ceasefire now and bring them home now.
Israel's foreign minister was in Prague today. He was asked about the situation in Gaza.
We will finish the war in Gaza when we will achieve our objectives to bring back to their homes 101 kidnapped citizens, hostages.
So despite the pressure from protesters here in Israel, despite the pressure from the United States and other countries to try to broker this ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel in light of the deal between Hezbollah and Israel, the position of the Israeli government really continues to be that it's going to keep pursuing this war and that it's going to be over when Israel says it is. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Flash floods and landslides have killed 27 people this week in Indonesia. In Sumatra province, there were landslides in a number of mountainside locations. Officials say it will take days to evacuate some areas. One of the worst incidents occurred when a tourist bus overturned. The landslides have cut off roads, making rescues all the more difficult. In the capital, Jakarta, more than 50 neighborhoods were submerged. Seasonal rains until March frequently result in flooding and landslides in Indonesia, an archipelago of 17,000 islands.
A landslide has inundated at least 8 villages in eastern Uganda. 15 people are confirmed dead, but more than 100 others are missing. This follows weeks of heavy rain. The slide also swept away bridges and left roads flooded. It's made it difficult for rescue workers to reach the site. Officials say 40 households are completely buried. A landslide that struck the same area 14 years ago left 80 people dead.
U.S. Border Patrol says 16 foreign nationals have been caught crossing into the U.S. from Canada in recent days. Donald Trump has threatened hefty tariffs on Canadian goods if illegal crossings are not stopped. The CBC's News Investigative Unit's Jorge Barrera looks at why cracking down on the border is much harder than it may sound.
Your problem up here is the northern border.
That's Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan.
Canada's immigration rules are so lax. Not just about anybody can get to Canada. And, the northern border is wide open. You can just, either get across St. Lawrence River in 30 seconds.
Now Trump is threatening tariffs on Canadian goods if it doesn't stem the flow of illegal crossings. 19,000 people crossed the border through this region over 12 months, ending in September, more than the previous 17 years combined, according to U.S. data. By far the most of any point along the Canada-U.S. frontier. So what can Canada do?
It's technically not an offense in Canada to enter another country, so it's charged and prosecuted as a conspiracy to violate U.S. law.
Janine Plamondon is a prosecutor with the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. She's handled a number of human smuggling cases.
They're often complex cases. It takes a lot of work to put one of these prosecutions together.
She says these cases often need the help of U.S. law enforcement to be successful.
There's going to be evidence on both sides of the border because it's an offense that affects both of our countries.
For Canadian police officers, the current laws make it tough to stop U.S.-bound human smuggling.
Ours is very constrained. It's physically getting them across or being an active part of that organization if you can prove it in a conspiracy.
Retired Ontario Provincial Police Detective Matt Amer investigated cross-border human smuggling with a task force. To prove that conspiracy, Amer says you need to show there's a group with a clear leader with plans and actions to move people into the U.S. And that takes time, surveillance, resources.
It's maybe time for some update on the tools that the officers have in terms of legislation. Whether it's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, whether it's criminal code, perhaps something needs to be amended just to make it easier to prosecute.
Sometimes it does get a little frustrating. You spend so many hours on the road, you want to do things, you want to prevent things. It doesn't make sense.
CBC News accompanied the RCMP on border patrols along the Quebec-New York state border this summer. Officers doing what they could within the constraints of the law.
You're running around chasing your tail all evening, all night, all day in, day out.
But there's another challenge to border policing.
We don't have an officer stationed around every corner, and it's just physically impossible with the length of the border.
Mountains, rivers, lakes, thick forests, from sea to sea. Parts of these borderlands remain beyond the easy reach of patrols and the high-tech gaze of drones, cameras, and sensors.
And that report from the CBC's Jorge Barrera.
With thousands of Canadians dying from substance abuse every year, politicians are debating whether to force individuals into treatment for drug addiction. This practice has already been adopted by several states south of the border, but it's very controversial. Julia Wong reports from Washington State.
Washington State has something Canada doesn't have right now. It can force someone with addictions into treatment against their will. So we came here to find out how it works. In Washington state, someone living with a substance use disorder can be assessed, then detained for treatment against their will. CBC News was invited inside one of the facilities where people are taken. Patients spend 5 days at these types of sites, and then they can be kept for weeks or perhaps months longer. The facilities are secure, and you need a pass to move within the building. Now, while there, patients take part in activities, sessions to learn about their triggers and work on their discharge plans. Advocates say this type of involuntary care is important for those living with addictions.
When a person is in crisis, they really need someone to step in and really look at what's going on with them and get them help that they need when they're not able to. And that really is the spirit of Ricky's Law, that someone suffering from substance use should not have to suffer alone and be able to get the help that they need as fast as they can in order to save their life.
I've come back to say hi to the staff because, you know, the staff, they really did save my life. They really tried to get me sober, and they succeeded.
The law has been in effect since 2018, and it has its critics as well. Some say detainment is a slippery slope, and they say treatment is more effective when people want it. They also have other reservations.
What we know about substance use disorders is that it comes in all shapes and sizes, and there is pretty clear consensus that there is not one treatment that works for everyone.
Stakeholders in Washington state say there are lots of challenges with implementing a law like this, like having the staff to do the assessments, organizing the logistics to get patients to involuntary treatment sites, and coordinating with facilities to take patients in. They say there's lots of layers to a law like this, something they want Canadian lawmakers to keep in mind if they move forward with similar legislation. Julia Wong, CBC News, Olympia, Washington.
Welcome to the holiday shopping season. Tomorrow's Black Friday is a red-letter day on the retail calendar, and the advertising blitz won't end until Boxing Day sales have wrapped up. The CBC's Nisha Patel takes a look at that holiday advertising and how it's crafted to get people to buy.
Black Friday has become one of the busiest shopping days of the year.
If I find a good deal, I feel it's great. I did like 50% off on kids' clothes.
And it's not easy to escape the spending frenzy.
You get 2 or 3 emails from the same company a day, so sometimes I find it a bit too much.
Canadians are forecast to spend 10% more over the holidays this year than last. And with higher prices, many are looking for deals. 48% say they plan to shop on Black Friday. This marketing professor says sales season ads are designed using all kinds of tricks, from specific colors to countdown clocks, tapping into consumers' emotions to encourage buying.
I really need to buy this now, right now. So that's using the scarcity and trigger people's fear of missing out.
Canadian Black Friday tech deals are actually really good this year.
Social media is also adding pressure and shaping shopping decisions.
The companies use influencers, establish trust and emotion to make those spill over to their brand.
Black Friday deals on Amazon Canada are finally here.
With personalized shopping links and instant access to online marketplaces, impulse spending can quickly spiral out of control.
I would say more often it's that we're trying to not feel something, and the act of spending or buying something allows us to temporarily push that feeling away.
It's 40% off plus buy 3 get 3 free.
Experts say there are other ways to get a pick-me-up, and taking a break from social media can be good for your wallet.
Turn off the phone. You know, maybe step out of the house, step out of the office, into nature, talk to a friend.
While getting a deal may feel good, not spending for spending's sake might end up feeling even better. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, check the calendar. We're getting pretty close to December, and the weather seems to be kind of matching, doesn't it?
But you have a memory, at least, of some finer days.
Actually, this one was taken just yesterday on the eastern shore.
Such a distant memory.
That's right, on the eastern shore, and I love this. A first-time contributor to Ryan's picks.
Lovely.
And so love the first-time, long-time listener, first-time caller. Have a look at this. So we'll zoom in on the eastern shore, and this just west of Sheet Harbor, Pleasant Harbor, and a beautiful spot here by the looks of it. And Colette saying it's been a beautiful couple days there. They've had some sunny breaks and no wind.
Everyone rushes to that part of the province now.
That's right.
Colette, what have you done?
Yeah, we'll see a better chance of some breaks like that on Friday afternoon across the province, which is great. So thanks to Colette for sharing. There's the mess tonight into tomorrow, and again, primarily New Brunswick dealing with the real mess with the rain further to the south for us. And yes, northern areas will see some of that snow tonight, but we are looking at that change to rain by the time we get to tomorrow morning, and not expecting much in the way of travel impacts from the snow, except for perhaps the Cobequid Pass. We will see those temperatures quite mild tomorrow, then falling in the afternoon, and then Saturday, temperatures still 3, 4, 5 degrees, which is actually pretty close to seasonal for this time of year. It's into the 7-day that we're going to be looking at that cooler air really sweeping in on the other side of this low. So we're looking at 2, 1, 0. Wow. Yeah.
Down we go.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Ryan, thanks so much. Well, so far, only science fiction has succeeded in bringing people from Earth to Mars, but a British historical site is bringing Mars to Earth.
That's right. A 7-meter representation of the red planet is hanging in London's Old Royal Naval College. It's been carefully crafted with detailed NASA imagery.
Each centimeter replicates 10 kilometers of the planet's surface. The exhibit will continue until late January.
It's impressive. That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.